Welcome to the Coffee and Kidlit Show. My name is Travis T. Peterson. I am a children's book author as well as a book designer. And on this show, I like to interview other kidlit authors who are producing books that are just so inspiring and encouraging. And today is no different. Now, October happens to be Breast Awareness Month. And so I have a very special guest on today who has gone through the journey of breast cancer. And so she has written this book called Mommy Has a Boo Boo. And Marci, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Travis.
Now, the subtitle here is Explaining Breast Cancer to Children. So that's kind of what we'll be talking about today with your book and how to talk to your children about the diagnosis if you're a parent or if you have a family member who has cancer, whether it's breast cancer or any other kind of cancer. This book is very helpful to kind of open the door for that. So thanks so much for coming. Now, I've given kind of an introduction to the show, but I do just have to say that I mentioned that I'm a children's book author, and my latest book, Never Ever Build a Blanket Fort, is in pre-orders right now. I have copies here in Norway. If you are international, I can ship those to you, but they're still on the way to the US. So you can go to launchmissioncreative.com to order my books. And if you're watching the show and you're interested in Marci's book, I have the link down in the description below where you can order hers as well. So be sure to check that out. So Marci, give us just a little bit of background of you and just a little bit of your story.
Yeah, so I do real estate full time, actually, Travis. And then
Yeah.
when I was diagnosed in 2018 with breast cancer, I had to take a step back and obviously rest and take care of my body. But I just started writing, and I never thought I'd be a writer. I never thought I'd be an author. But I said, I'm going to put this out there because I decided to, I ended up doing a double mastectomy, but I ended up not doing reconstruction. So I stayed flat. And with that, I mean, there's so many changes because I've got two little girls and they were 1 and 5 at the time. So, of course, when girls grow up, they're going to start hitting puberty and all that. So I wanted to explain to them, all the changes that mommy was going to go through. And that's what my book explains. It says, talks about the surgery that I had to do, talks about the chemo where I lost all of my hair and I did radiation. But in the end, mommy's still the same. I still love my girls. I may not be able to play with them right away. I may not be able to lift them up, but I'm still there. And that's really what it's about, is that even though mommy looks different, she's still the same person. And so that just helps bring the awareness of people that look different as well. And, you still love that person for who they are, not just because of the way they look.
I think that's so important, especially for young kids who are maybe seeing what's happening with their mom and yeah, they don't quite understand everything. And I think it's good to just kind of start the conversation and yeah, just kind of be open about what's coming or what's already happened maybe. And yeah, I think that's fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about the book, if you will. You already gave kind of a little introduction, but give us a little summary.
Yeah. So, like I said, I mean, it just talks about, it goes through my journey pretty much. I did my surgery first, and then I had to do chemo and radiation. And so the pictures depict that and show even myself where I have long hair, and then it goes to me cutting it shorter and then going bald. And so it's showing the changes in there, which is very helpful because it's interesting. I just did a Zoom story time with a family because their little boy was so upset that his mom was going to lose her hair. And so I mentioned on one of my Facebook groups, I said, why don't you get this book? And I didn't say, I'm the author or whatever. And she goes, actually, I got it. And I said, oh my God, well, I wrote that.
Yeah.
And so we started talking like just, one-on-one. And I said, I would love to do a Zoom with you and I'll do a story time. And after we did that, I mean, it really comes down to it is that I helped her family because the son is not as upset. He's getting it. He's understanding because he sees that, I've gone through it and I came out okay in the end. And that's really what it's about, is like, I want to help these kids understand. And to kind of lead off with that, I wrote a journal to go along with Mommy Has a Boo Boo, and it's called Mommy Has a Boo Boo Now What? And it's a discussion journal. So, for example, it says, who's going to take me to school? And kids can, they can write in it, they can draw, because kids have so many questions. They want to know, well, Mommy does all this stuff for me. Who's going to do it in her place? And, so they're very nervous. And I've got a picture of like hats and wigs, and say, what are some examples that you can help Mommy with when she's losing her hair? And I have a part where it says, keep drawing. Like, what are some of your ideas? So it just kind of gets them involved and be like, hey, Mommy, I want to be there for you. I want to help you. And so the two go together. I mean, you can do them individually, especially for the older kids, because the children's book is geared towards 4 to 9-year-olds. But really, I mean, it can be used for grandmothers, aunts, family friends, any woman who is going through breast cancer.
I'm sure it helps to not only find answers to the questions they already have, but maybe bring up some questions that they weren't thinking of before, and bring that into the conversation a little easier, maybe. So
I do have really that hard question in there, Travis. I do, because unfortunately some women don't make it. And so I do have that question, Mommy, are you going to die? And you got to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And it's so hard. And some women, they want to avoid it and not even tell their kids about it. But I know, like with my girls, I mean, my oldest was 5 at the time. She was very aware of what was happening with me. And, sometimes like she'd be afraid to hug me because she was afraid, like, because I had drains and stuff. And she was just afraid she was going to hurt me. And so just to have those conversations and be open. And for me, I'm very honest with my kids. I mean, I walk around, they see my scars, and I've got prosthetics, and it's funny because one time I put them on and my daughter goes, Mom, what are you wearing? I said, what are you talking about? She goes, take those off. Those don't even look like you. So right there tells
me. So unnatural.
Yeah, it's so unnatural because she's so used to me not having my breasts.
Yeah.
That makes me warm and happy, because I'm obviously teaching my girls that it's okay. You don't have to look like everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And to embrace who you are, not who you're supposed to be, or, some kind of vision of what we're supposed to look like.
Right.
Marci, walk with us your journey with cancer and what that looked like for you, and even some of your own fears maybe along the way.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, I was diagnosed in 2018. I was 40 years old. And a couple of years prior to that, I had actually, I did a self-exam, and I hardly ever did them. And I had felt a lump on my right side, and we found out it was just fibroids. So I had my first mammogram at 38, which normally is 40. And so then I had my daughter, my youngest daughter. She was, she was 1. And I was showering with my oldest, and I said, I'm just going to do a self-exam while she's playing around in the shower. And I felt something. And at first I was like, oh my God, what is that? And then, I'd started working out again. So I thought maybe I pulled a muscle. So I had my husband feel it, and he goes, well, you better just go in and get checked. And so I got in immediately, which was great. And so my doctor said, oh, it's probably the fibroid went to the other side or something, but let's still do a mammogram and ultrasound. And it's interesting because they've been coming out with the 3D mammograms. And so I had booked it, but it was for 3 weeks out. And Travis, something in my head said to me, you need to get in sooner. So I rescheduled it, and they said, well, we'll just take more pictures, which is like a 3D, if we have any concerns. So I got in maybe like a week later, and that same, like literally the radiologist comes in and she goes, do you have another hour? And she goes, we found something. I want to do a biopsy. And so here in the United States, sometimes women don't get in for a biopsy for another week. So I was very fortunate where they had an opening for me, and they were able to get me in. Of course, I was crying like during the entire time because it's just not enjoyable. And
Was
she
it a
said,
shock at that point?
not shocked. I mean, I wasn't shocked yet.
Yeah.
I was just very nervous because I've never had the biopsy before, so I didn't know. It was more of the unknown. And so the radiologist said to me it was on a Wednesday, and it's so interesting because now we remember all these dates, and so I celebrate all these dates now. And so she said, well, you'll probably find out on Friday. And so after she left, the nurse says to me, you're going to find out tomorrow. And so, of course, all day on Thursday, I'm calling, I'm like asking for my results. And then I took my daughter to her swim lesson. And I said to my husband, I still haven't heard anything. It was like 3:30 in the afternoon. And I said, I'm gonna make a call. And so I called him. I'm sitting there while waiting for her to go into her swimming class. And I'm sitting there, and the nurse gets on and she goes, hold on, I'll be right back. And then she gets on the phone and she says those words, I'm so sorry you have cancer.
Mm.
And that's when the shock hit me.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Like, I mean, I don't even remember driving home. I mean, I took my daughter, she wasn't even in swim class yet. And I said, we're leaving. I started crying. I'm sure everyone looked at me like, what is wrong with this lady?
Mm.
But I got back in the car, and that's the first time my daughter really saw me cry hysterically. She's like, Mommy, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I said, nothing. We're going to fix it. Mommy's going to fix it. It's going to be okay. And, obviously I'm saying that to myself, but saying that to her to comfort her. And I mean, I don't even remember driving home, Travis.
Yeah.
And I called my husband, of course. And then I called my aunt, and I was like, call my brother. My parents were out of the country in Israel, so I didn't want to call them. I wanted, because they were on vacation. And so my family and I decided we're not going to say anything. I avoided their phone calls because my parents know I'm a workaholic anyway. And
Okay.
so, like, I wouldn't answer. Like every time I talk to them, I'm like, oh, I've got a client. I'm too busy because I was so afraid I was going to break down. I didn't want to ruin their trip.
Mm-hmm.
So when they got home, my brother and I had this plan to, tell them. And of course, he gets there at like 6 a.m, which is 4 a.m, Arizona time at the time. And my mom goes, well, why is your brother here? And why are you guys calling me so early? And then my brother starts crying. My mom's like, what is going on? My whole plan was to like ask her how the trip was, whatever. But then I said those words. I said, Mommy. And, here I am at 40 years old, still using Mommy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Mommy, I have breast cancer. And, and she was shocked. And she goes, and then like she blamed it on herself. She goes, it's my fault because she smoked while we were growing up. And it's not your fault. I mean, it happens. Who knows how I got it? I mean, you go through the what ifs or like, how did I get it? And I mean, I have an idea of how I got it. Because with my first daughter, we had to do insemination. And so I was on a drug called Clomid for almost a year. And even my fertility doctor said to me, she goes, that was not good that you were on Clomid for that long. She goes, that could turn into cancer. And so that's probably how I ended up getting it. But then I went into my just mode of like the workaholic mode. And I mean, I set up 3 doctor's appointments the very next day, and I started interviewing doctors. And I reached out to friends that I knew had breast cancer in Arizona. So I got referrals for other doctors. And we just, my husband and I just went from doctor to doctor and until I found my team. And I mean, my oncologist was my last I mean, I had interviewed 3 oncologists, and I still wasn't like thrilled because you're going to be with that doctor for at least 10 years. And I said, I'm going to go one more. And he goes, are you sure? And I said, yes. And he goes, okay. So we go in, and my doctor was just so warm and friendly, gives me a big hug, and he goes, we're going to beat this. And I said, you're my doctor.
Yeah.
I mean, you get that warm, fuzzy feeling. Even my mom was with us at the time. And it's
that's the kind of doctor you should have, really.
Yeah. And I mean, it's been great. He hugs me every time I see him. So I'm going to be sad when, because we're going to be moving out of state in a few months. But I'm going to tell him, I'm going to be like, I'm still going to call you for second opinions. So it's like, I just went through it all. I ended up getting tested for the BRCA gene, and that helps determine whether or not you can get cancer elsewhere. And so I was fortunate it came back negative. And I'm Jewish background, so Ashkenazi Jews are also prone to getting breast cancer and ovarian cancer. And so um, I was lucky enough to not have that gene, and it didn't run in my family per se. I mean, I had like a third cousin that had breast cancer, but the doctors really want like the immediate family, and so they decided because I ended up being hormone positive, and we call it ERPR positive, and then it's like a HER2. You can be negative or positive. So I was HER2 negative, and I was hormone positive, and so I guess that's the nice cancer to get, is what they say.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
easier one to really beat, because there's different kinds. There's triple negative, triple positive. And then it can metastasize, into your bones, which puts you into stage 4. And so I ended up being stage 3. They actually thought my tumor was smaller. They thought it was like 0.5. And so they thought I was stage 1.
Mhm.
And so being hormone positive and that HER2 negative meant that I was going to do my surgery first, where sometimes it's the other way around and women will start off with chemotherapy first. And so I ended up doing the surgery, and I decided I could have done a lumpectomy, but the thought of me, I was like, I want them gone. Because I'm the type of person, well, if I take that out, is it going to go to the other breast? I said, just get rid of them. I don't care. And I knew I didn't want a foreign object in my body.
Yeah.
So I didn't want implants. And I could have done something called a deep flap, which is where they take the fat and the tissue from your abdomen and form breast out of it. And sometimes it could fail, and then they would have to put an implant in. And it was a 13-hour surgery, and you'd have to do more surgeries. And I said, I'm done. I said, I don't want it. And my husband was gung ho. He's like, stay flat. I don't care. And I mean, I'm going on almost 4 years, and it doesn't bother me at all. I mean, I'll wear the prosthetics occasionally, but so after my surgery, it ended up, my tumor was a lot bigger. It was, oh God, was it 5? I don't know. It was a big tumor, and it ended up being stage 3.
Okay.
And so, and then they took out lymph nodes, because during all my scans, I did like an MRI, I did PET scans, nothing to my lymph nodes showed up. But when they took them out, they took 12 out, and 4 of them were precancerous. So my surgeon says to me, Marci, I'm so glad you made that decision to take them both. She goes, because you'd be on my table in a couple months, back on my table.
Yeah.
And so that, that's scary too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it was definitely a peace of mind that you went ahead and had everything removed, so that you wouldn't have to keep coming back or have to come back later for the same process.
Now I still have to do my self exams, even though I don't have anything. I still have to feel around, because I could get another lump somewhere. I mean, it can go in my sternum. I mean, there are women that have reoccurrences, unfortunately. And so we still have to do our due diligence. And so I'm very passionate about helping women, because Travis, a year after, my cousin just had a baby, and she says to the doctor, I've hit my deductible. My cousin just went through breast cancer, and I'd like to have a mammogram. And she was 33. And the doctor said, okay, whatever. They found stage 1.
Wow.
Never felt it. Never, and so, I get chills every time I tell that story, because I saved my cousin's life.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't have known about it, because she wouldn't have gotten a mammogram for another 7 years. And so I just want, so I'm on all these Facebook groups, just getting out there and telling women, make sure you get your mammograms, do your self exams. And I'm there for the ones that have the small kids, because they're so afraid of how to tell their children what mommy's about to go through. And that's my whole purpose of my books. And I've written other books too. I've written some journals to help women go who've been newly diagnosed. So I've got the breast cancer GPS. So it's got questions to ask your doctors, all your different doctors, a place to put all your medical history. Because of course you go in, you got to fill out all those forms and stuff. And so it's
Yeah.
just good to have it all in place. And then
What a
it's got,
great tool.
what'd you say?
What a great tool to have.
Yeah. So it's, and it's got tips and tricks through surgeries and chemo and radiation. And then a place where you can put your own information in there. Because of course I'm not going to hit everything. So I did that one. I've done like just a writing journal. I've done another one called A Warrior's Journey, which is for all types of cancers, actually. And it's to reflect on your well-being because, things have changed. Like in the beginning, yes, I'm scared and I'm shocked. And I'm like, oh my God, am I going to die? And so I've got questions in there like, how are you feeling at the time? And then in 6 months or a year, I have a place for another date where you can come back and maybe things have changed for the better, for the worse, whatever. But at least you can reflect and be like, hey, I did something different. I changed my eating. I changed whatever. I started working out more. And so I did that one. And then my latest is a breast cancer word search. So that was kind of fun to make.
Yeah.
Because, you're sitting in chemo, you're bored. I mean, I slept a lot of the time, but just something to do. But I've got things that kind of go off of my GPS book. So I've got some tips and tricks, but then I've got funny things in there of like funny names you call your breasts. So I've got 2 pages of different names that we call them. And then, so it's not appropriate for kids because I do
No.
have the F word in there. Because I have one page is something like, what do you want to say to people? Because everyone's like, oh, you're going to get new boobs. Like, isn't that great? And you just want to be like,
Yeah.
Get away.
Right.
So I did that. So yeah, I mean, it's been a journey. I mean, I published these in 2020. I was diagnosed in 2018. I've published all 8 of these, or I started at 2020 and now it's 2022 and I've published 8 books already.
You've been busy.
I've been busy being a full-time mom, being a realtor, being an author. And then in the midst of that, I actually opened up a publishing agency called Pad to Publishing to help other people become self-published authors. So
I have links to the book Mommy Has a Boo Boo in the description if anyone wants this book as well as the journal. But I'm going to put the links to your other books as well in case anyone is interested in those. Such great tools for those who are going through the same journey that you went through, and I think they're so helpful. Tell us about the moment that you told your kids, because that's kind of what your book is about. So I want to kind of hear how you did it yourself, and what was the challenge behind that?
I remember. Well, obviously my 5-year-old at the time knew I was crying hysterically.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, we're very honest with her. And, some women won't bring up the cancer word. And they'll just say, mommy has a boo-boo and she's going to get it fixed, which is fine. I mean, you've got to do what you got to do for your family. But I was straight up with my daughter and I said, mommy has an illness called cancer and I've got this thing in my boob that we have to get rid of. And I'm going to have surgery. And so, I mean, the baby was 1, so obviously we didn't say anything to her. She has no clue. She knows now because she looks at the book and she goes, oh, that's me. She'll pick out one of the girls in there and she'll go, mommy has a boo-boo. And so she knows I had cancer because we do all these walks and things and we're very involved. But I think I just told her and I was very fortunate because after I told my parents, they are snowbirds here in Arizona, which means they have a house out here. And at the time they had a house the next street over from us. So they were out here for the entire year. And I was very fortunate because they took my girls on the weekends I was having chemo. And because I didn't want my girls to see me being sick. I know, again, some women are not fortunate, then they've got to, go through it all and do all that. But my parents would take my girls on the weekends. They'd bring them back to me on Monday because I felt better on Monday. And so I just rested, all weekend. And I got smart about it too, because the first weekend I was very sick and I had to go back in and get more fluids to hydrate me. And so that was like the game changer for me. So every time I went into chemo, I said, give me fluids. And so I did the whole weekend. Like I was able to eat and drink and like normal. And then I'd go back to work. I mean, I joked that I was wearing a mask before COVID hit. I was showing houses in a mask and I said, don't touch me.
Yeah.
Um, so, but I worked the entire time and I rested when my body was telling me you need to rest. And, again, body's different, everybody is different. Their bodies are different of how they're going to react. So, I just tell women, you do what you need to do. And in the United States, there's a lot of resources and I'm on sites where some women are in Australia and they've got a different type of healthcare, and I'm sure Norway does too, where there's not so many resources. But like in the United States, I was able to get a lot of grants to help pay some of my bills, my mortgage, even groceries. Get some gift cards. And so I tell women, I mean, it's tedious to fill them out, but I said you got to do it. I mean, even though I was still working real estate, I still had to cut back though. So it's like I wasn't making what I usually made. And so I still needed some help. Even my husband was working, but we still had bills to pay because now we had all these medical expenses. And it's like, people just don't get it. And even today, like, so I'm 4 years out, I'm still having, like, I'm on medication for the next 10 years. I take a shot every 3 months. I've had to go to physical therapy to make sure that my arm, my range of motion, is up there. And I got something, some women can get lymphedema, which is the swelling in the arm because the lymph nodes were taken out.
Okay.
I was lucky enough where I didn't get the lymphedema, but I got something called cording, which is like a tightness in your arm, and it's kind of like a cord that looks like it's going across your arm, and it's just very tight. And so I had to do physical therapy to help loosen that up and get rid of it. And I want to say last year it came back. And so again, I had to go back to physical therapy. So it's just, you may have the surgery and you may have beat the cancer and the cancer is gone and you're in remission, but you're not done.
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize that. They think, oh, you're fine. You look normal, you look normal, whatever. I'm not though. Every time I go to the doctor, every time I feel something, I mean, I get the, we call it scanxiety. And so we're just very nervous. I mean, I remember I had this ganglion cyst on my wrist. It was like a big protruding bump. And of course I freaked out. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, that's gotta be something, right? And so I go to my dermatologist and she's like, no, it's not. And she like, does her thing. And like, so it hasn't come back. But that's what we get so nervous about, every little bump and bruise, or, if you're really tired, oh my God, what's happening to me? And so that's always going to be in the back of my head. And so that's nerve wracking. Because, I mean, I feel fine. I'm working out, I'm eating well, and I'm back to doing my normal stuff, but it's still in the back of my head. Like, is it going to come back? Am I doing everything right to prevent it? And so
what helps you with those thoughts? What helps you sort of go through those thoughts?
I mean, it's helping women. I love talking, and I volunteer with a group here in Arizona called My Help Bag, and we're a local nonprofit where we deliver bags to women filled with comfort items, and we actually go and sit with the women, and we let them talk, and we follow up with them afterwards as well, and we're there for them. We're like, whatever you need. And we tell them about the resources in Arizona. I know there's some nationwide ones as well, but there's a lot of local ones here in Phoenix that you can get help through. And we've got comfort items such as like a blanket, because in chemo you get cold, or, warm fuzzy socks, but everything's donated. So, it just depends what we get donated. Sometimes we've had makeup because, of course, we're going to lose our eyebrows and eyelashes if you are going to be on that chemo that makes you lose your hair. And so, of course, women are, they get nervous about that too, like the way that they're going to look. And so they want to have the makeup on and things like that. And so, we're just there for the women. And I know my organization also helps out with if you're underinsured to help with free mammograms as well,
Yeah.
and she does give out some gift cards too if you really do need some help for groceries. So that just helps me because it's a passion I didn't realize I had. It's a passion to help these women get through it and be like, hey, I got through it. It's just a bump in the road, a crappy bump in the road. um,
Mhm.
for the year, and we're going to do what we can to hopefully get you through that. Unfortunately, some women, don't make it, and um, but we want to be there for them through it all, just to give them the support. And I know that definitely helped me because I would talk to women on these Facebook groups, and I would find out things that my doctors wouldn't tell me. Like my surgeon, she told me a little bit of exercising right after my surgery when I was okay when I was cleared. But then these women were like, no, you need to go to physical therapy. You need to do this and this
Okay.
and this. And it's like, well, my doctor didn't tell me that. But that's what, so I'm still on these sites saying, hey, make sure you get fluids because that was a game changer for me. And so
Yeah.
just give them those tips and those tricks, um, because I mean, of course, every body is different and how you react to things, and but whatever we can help, why not share it with them and say like, hey, this helped me, maybe it'll help you. um, and so that's actually helped me in a better place. I'm not as nervous anymore. um, I know, like, I go every 3 months to my doctor, and my last checkup, my tumor markers actually were raised a little bit. And so he wasn't totally concerned. I mean, we're gonna check him again. I actually see him in October. Actually, I see him this month, yeah. And we're gonna get my blood work checked again. And so I started to eat better. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, I love my sweets. I used to have like sweets like 3, 4 times a day. So I
Yeah.
cut back. So it's just things in moderation. I'm just kind of changing the way I'm doing things. So hopefully my numbers go back to normal. But those are things. So yes, I'm a little nervous about that, but I don't think about it every day. I only really think about it like if I'm doing an interview or something. I'm like, oh yeah, by the way. So it gets easier, I guess you want to say, Travis. It gets easier as time goes on. You don't think about it as much until like the day of, oh yeah, like someone will like, oh, I have my mammogram. It's been a year. Then they'll get a little nervous, but they haven't really thought about it all year. So
Well, I love that going through this whole process has kind of inspired you to help others that are going through the same thing. And with that, you and I have something that's very much in common because my own book was inspired by my daughter and brings deaf awareness, and it's through her being born deaf that I wanted to help others who also had deaf children, and to learn
mhm.
ASL and other things. And it's interesting that some of us will take these crises in our life to, instead of getting bogged down in it and feeling sorry for ourselves,
Mhm.
we decide to help others. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think this is such a powerful thing to see that. So, what would you tell to other parents who are facing this crisis, and they need to tell their own kids? What would you say to them?
I mean, there's so many resources out there, but for me, like being honest was the number one thing with my kids. And because they're like I said, they're so intuitive, they're gonna notice things are changing. Like if you lose your hair and all of a sudden you have a wig on, well, mommy, why are you wearing a wig all of a sudden? So I
Hmm.
just, I tell people like be upfront with them. If you want to use the word cancer, I mean, in my book, I mean, I talk about how it's not like a cold. You're not going to catch it. The kid's not going to catch it from you. Um, it's just not, it's not a rave, but it is an illness that, mommy or grandma or your aunt is going to have to go through to get better. So my book like just really explains it in a childlike way, an easy way to explain it. And I don't know. I mean, I just tell people, be upfront as much as you can, or however you decide you want to tell your kids. But I wouldn't hide it from them, because they know something's going on. They're going to hear you whispering in the background in the other room, and they're going to want to know what's mommy keeping from me. And you're supposed to be the safe place. And so for that, to be able to tell them, like, hey, I'm going through some stuff. Let me tell you in a kid-friendly way what's happening to me.
Yeah. So it's very important to be honest and not sugarcoat what's happening.
I think so. That's how I feel.
Yeah. I agree with that. So you may have already kind of hinted on this, but what was really the inspiration behind this book? Why did you feel like you're in the right position to write a book about this subject and put it out into the world?
Well, it was because of my girls. I mean, I had found other books. I know there's one out there, Chemo No Hair, but since I knew I wasn't going to have reconstruction, I couldn't find anything that said, hey, mommy's gonna stay flat, or mommy's getting rid of her boobies. I mean, I know there's something out there that talks about, mommy's gonna have a double mastectomy and what that means. So I started writing, and honestly, it was probably like 5 pages long. And so my best friend from high school, she's a freelance writer. And I said to her, I said, Kristen, I said, hey, will you look at this for me? And so she helped me write it. So she was my editor. And I don't think she thought I was going to take it to where I've taken it. She thought it was going to just be like more like my family, give it out to my family or whatever. So, but, I ended up self-publishing it. And I said, I want to get this out there. I want other kids to know, like, hey, there's changes. And because not everyone's going to like my book, which is fine. And not everyone likes the other cancer books that are out there. And so, every book's going to hit a family differently. So they're all out there. And, but it was because of my girls. And I want them to know, like, hey, mommy's going to be flat and I'm going to look different. But you know what? I'm still here. I still love you. I'm still going to yell at you when you're bad. And I'm still going to do, what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to parent you. And I'm going to fight for my life to make sure that I'm still there for you.
That's really great. And, we've talked a bit about your journey, and I'm so glad that you were open about that and sharing the whole journey that you've been on with cancer and all of the ups and downs that came with that. But some of our audience will be those who are writing books and maybe even those who have gone through cancer or are going through cancer, and they want to write books like this as well. What are some of the challenges that you faced with publishing a book?
Yeah. So for my first one, I mean, I had no clue about anything.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything from being going the traditional route versus self-publishing, going through the vanity publishers. And so, I mean, I did a lot of research. I ended up getting on this one site, Six Figure Publishing, with Crystal Swain Bates, and she's a African-American writer for children. And I mean, she's made over 6 figures, and she's very knowledgeable. So I've been on her group. I've taken a lot of her classes. And I mean, I wouldn't have known how to write my journals, or like just how, because I was able to do them myself on Canva. And so I didn't have to go out and hire someone, but I didn't know anything about Upwork and Fiverr and how to find people and find the illustrators and all of that. And then getting your ISBN number and getting it in the Library of Congress. I mean, in my first book, I did everything backwards. I wrote the book.
Which was the first one?
My first one, The Mommy Has a Boo Boo.
Okay, that is the first one. Okay.
Yeah, that's my first one. But like I said, I did everything backwards because, like, I didn't know about the Library of Congress. So after I published it, technically you're supposed to get the number before you publish it. But I was able to get it afterwards. But then it's like I had to go back to my formatter, I don't know how many times, and be like, wait, you need to change this, and wait, this word is wrong. Like, I'm gonna have a copyright issue. And so like things like that. And I'm like, I just had to fix it. And it's like, you're never going to be done with your first book. And I finally said, I'm put my hands up. I said, I'm done. I it is what it is. Cause someone said, well, why don't you make like a grandma has a boo-boo? And I said, I'm done with this book. Like change the words, when you're reading it.
Yeah.
But so now I've learned all of that stuff and I'm able to teach other people that. I mean, I'm still learning every day. I'm still learning new things. But it's like the marketing. I mean, as a self-published author, you have to do everything. It's like another full-time job because you've got to market yourself. I mean, I'm going to events, and especially in October. I mean, October 1st, I had 2 events, one in the morning at a breast cancer walk, and then one in the evening for another breast cancer. And so I had booths at these, and it's like just to get out there and show them like here's these resources. And I'm always on Facebook, and I'm doing like I'm on Amazon with Amazon ads, and so it's like I didn't know all of that stuff. And so that those were just challenges where it's like now I'm learning, like, hey, you got to do this, and I'm going to be doing my first Kickstarter, Travis. So that makes me nervous because I'm working on my 9th book, and I've never done a Kickstarter. So this is a big challenge for me because I know it takes a lot of work. And
another learning curve. Yeah.
What'd you say?
I said another learning curve.
Another learning curve. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's like I'm trying to get my email list together because I want to have a launch team, and what does a launch team mean? It's like, so it's like all this new verbiage, all this new jargon that, I didn't know. And so I'm just, all these things. It's been fun. It's been fun, and I'm excited for my newest book coming out. So
tell us about that one while you're mentioning it.
Yeah. So my newest book is about a child learning they have cancer, and I'm going to do 2 versions, but 8 books. So this is huge for me.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm going to do a boy version and a girl version, but then I'm going to do Caucasian, African American, Asian, and Indian, because I want these kids to see themselves, because cancer doesn't discriminate. And these kids, they look at themselves, and they, most of the time they see a white child in a book, or they'll see now a lot of these African, they're writing Black stories with Black characters, which is fabulous. But there's other people out there, and I want these kids to say like, hey, I mean, I know I'm not hitting every ethnicity out there, but I'm going to, try to do what I can. And so I've come up with a title, which I can't say yet. If you want to be on my launch team, you'll have to be on my launch team to find out more. Because I do have a Facebook page where I'm saying Kids Fight Back. That's not the title of the book. I actually have a few different titles. But it's going to be good. And so I want to get it into hospitals. So I know with the Kickstarter, you can do different tiers. And so I want to have a tier where you can donate to hospitals. And so whether I'm still in Phoenix or in Missouri, like I want to get it to the children's hospitals, because I want these kids to have it and be like, hey, like I'm going to fight back. And even though they're small, I know a lot of kids are diagnosed when they're, 2, 3 years old. But it would still help them, because I know, again, when I brought up where, you want to tell them like, hey, you have something, but you don't have a cold. You can't, it's just not, you're not going to be fine the next day. So again, you got to be honest with those kids. Like, hey, what's going on? Again, you're going to be talking behind their backs. They're going to know something's wrong. And so I do it in a playful way. And I give some fun examples. I don't want to give away too much, but like I'll give one away where, for example, you got to get your blood drawn, or you might have to have a blood transfusion. So I kind of joke, I don't know if joke's the appropriate word, but it's kind of like being a vampire, where, the kids see those little vampires where, hey, I'm not like a vampire because I've got to have, have blood go through me. And so vampires, love blood. So, so I kind of make it fun, but in a roundabout way, like, hey, this is serious too. Like, this is what you're going to have to probably go through to get better. So
are you having to do research on?
I did some research. Actually, one of my daughters friends was diagnosed. I'm not sure which type. I know it was a type of leukemia. I'm not exactly sure which one. So I had her mom read it through it and stuff. And so she gave me some suggestions to switch out. I've reached out to some other mothers. I've had nurses read the books through Phoenix Children's Hospital. And so, yeah, I did more research on this one than my first book. One, because I wasn't a child going through cancer. So I wanted to see the child aspect of it and get their feeling. And then I actually, I had the little girl, because she's in our neighborhood and she's friends with my daughter still. I had her come over and I said, "Can I read the book to you?" And so I read it to her and I got her feedback, which was very positive. And so, and I let her know, because it was the boy version she was reading. I said, "Honey," I said, "there's going to be a girl version." And her eyes lit up and she goes, "Really?" And I said, so, so right there just tells me I know I'm doing the right thing, because these kids want to see themselves.
Right. Oh, that's so good. So, going back to your first book, Mommy Has a Boo Boo, what's been some of the feedback that you've gotten from readers on this book?
Just that, it's been very helpful. Just like the other night, I was at the breast cancer event at night, and this woman comes up to me and she goes, "I have your book." I said, "Oh my God." I said, "That's fabulous." I said, "Did it help?" And I asked, of course, how she's feeling and stuff. And so when I hear these women say, and I was at a retreat actually months ago, at a breast cancer retreat, and we're going around, I'm saying, I'm an author and I wrote this book. And this one lady goes, "I have your book. I read it to my 4-year-old." So it's exciting to hear that it's making a difference, and it's helping it's helping the families, like, hey, to understand. And so that's really, like, I'm not about wanting to make money off these books. It's like, I want to get them out there to help, and to help the families get through it. And that's what really warms my heart when it comes down to it, is that I'm helping somebody.
What would you say to other authors who they don't have a book out yet? They're still in the process of writing. They hear all these challenges that you've gone through. It's not it's like you said, it's a full-time job. What would you say to them?
Get it on paper. That's the first thing you got to do, is you got to write it down. And I started and I mentioned this, I started a publishing agency called Pad to Publishing. And so I've got consultations I've got different packages to help with that, where I've got like a children's book package, for example. So I can help with the finding the illustrator for you, and kind of taking that out of it. I mean, like I said, it is a full-time job, because you got to go and do it yourself and find all of that. And it's like, I've already got that team. But you've got to get it down on paper first. Just write it down. Like I said, mine was like 4 or 5 pages in the beginning and turned into a 24-page book. So you got to start somewhere, and it's to get it on to that piece of paper. And that's the first thing. And then from there, you really, the next step is, after you write it, you got to get it edited. You can't just go, "Oh, let me go find the illustrator." But you got to make sure the book is the way, you got to make sure copyright stuff. Because my newest book, I was going to actually go call it like Superboy or Supergirl, but it's a copyright issue because of the comic books. So I was like, "Oh no, I got to change my title." So, so it's like things like that. I mean, I wouldn't really think about it. It's like, so there's just a lot to it, but you've got to get it on pen and paper or on your computer. Just start typing it, and then go from there, and find the help to take it to the next step, and see. I know traditional publishing is harder, and obviously I've never gone that route. I've only done self-published, because again, I like to be in control, so I know what I'm doing. Where a traditional publisher, I had talked to someone, and like, they wanted to change my illustrations, and I said, well, I'm thinking, well, I already have them all. I'm not changing them. I found, yeah, are they like, I was drawn to my illustrator. Like, she put something up, and I loved her illustrations, and I said, "I want you to be my illustrator." And she's never done a book. And so for her and me, the first book was like so new to us. And so, I've definitely learned some things, but I loved it. And I said, I'm not going to change it. I don't want someone to change it for me. Like, this was my idea. This was my baby. Now moving forward, I know things, what to do differently and what not to do. But just get it out there. Don't be afraid. Try it. What's there to lose? Another book that's just out there that, someone, I mean, it could hit somebody that's like, oh my gosh, this book was made for me.
Yeah. I mean, you really do just have to write it. You just have to put pen to paper, get it started, get it on paper. If you never do that, then you'll never know what could happen with it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Mommy Has a Boo Boo by Marci Greenberg Cox. The link is down in the description. Go and check out this great book, Explaining Breast Cancer to Children. Next week, I just want to pull this up. I've got a picture of the book here, Slothee Wants Coffee by Nikki Pezzopane and Cameron Fica, I believe it's pronounced. This is actually a mother and son team who wrote this book about a sloth who travels all over the world tasting different coffees. And it's such a fun story, and I think it really fits well with the Coffee and Kidlit Show. And Nikki is such a fun person to talk to, so I'm looking forward to that. But Marci, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been such a great honor to hear your story and to hear how things are going with you as well as the book. So thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Travis.
All right. And we will see everyone next week.